Welcome to today's episode of Sports Scandals, where I document and narrate the stories about your favorite players of all time from yesteryear and the biggest rumors and scandals about them that y'all may have never heard of, before social media. I don't know if all of these scandals and rumors are true. I'm just putting the stories out in the air so that everybody can know about them. On our second episode, we got the man, the myth, the legend, Lawrence L.T. Taylor. Let's get to it.
I'm off ahead, so I guess I'm labeled a headhunter. Throw me on the verse and I promise you'll probably last longer. Moving through the masses, I'm crashing the main circuit. Too bad cause I had the plans to be modest, remain closer.
Lawrence Julius Taylor was born the middle child of three on February 4th, 1959 in Williamsburg, Virginia, to Clarence and Iris Taylor. His father, Clarence, worked as a dispatcher at the Port of Norfolk, and his mother, Iris, worked as a school teacher. LT was different from his brothers, being that he was a bit of a troublemaker and had a bad temperament. His parents said that you had to keep a very close eye on him at all times because if not, you would be in big trouble. Taylor did not play football until his 11th grade year, choosing to focus on baseball before then because his mother did not want him getting hurt. Since he didn't start to play football until late in high school, he wasn't heavily recruited, and the University of North Carolina was the only school that took interest in him. At UNC, he was a consensus All-American and ACC Defensive Player of the Year and at the top of everyone's draft boards going into the NFL. The New York Giants selected him number 2 overall in 1981. But wait, here's an interesting fact about this day. LT doesn't even remember what happened because he had drank 41 beers and couldn't remember a thing. That is nuts to not be able to remember your own draft day. Absolutely crazy. While in college, Lawrence was a party animal and was always getting into fights. Truth be told, his days in college were a precursor to what we would see from him later in life as an NFL player and beyond. He garnered the nickname Monster in college because of his wild antics. Nobody at Chapel Hill messed with LT, and he loved that feeling. The minute he got into the NFL, LT absolutely wreaked havoc on the opposition. No one had ever seen a player like him before. Until this day, he is still highly regarded as the best defensive player of all time. Some even consider him to be the best overall player of all time. Unfortunately, his rookie year is also when he started using cocaine. He and his teammates, per stories that are out there, basically had an orgy house filled with cocaine and women every day. But even with that being the case, Lawrence changed the way offenses had to call plays going forward. He was a one-man wrecking crew, and nobody could stop the freight train from coming. I mean, prior to him joining the team, the Giants had been out of the playoffs for 18 straight years. His first year there, they made the playoffs. He won Defensive Player of the Year in just his first year, and that's the first time that had ever been done in the NFL. But hold on, I got some wild scandals for you. In 1981, during Lawrence's rookie year, the New York Giants actually took out a life insurance policy against him due to his recklessness on and off the field. He didn't really care about his life or sustaining injury, and he almost died during that year in a car accident while speeding. The owner actually said to the GM at the time, George Young, that he would be shocked if LT lived past the age of 30, so why not profit from it? That is crazy. But it gets wilder. Lawrence's sex life was so wild during his playing years that he had a foolproof way of combating STDs, a strawberry milkshake laced with penicillin. He and his roommates/teammates would have these shakes in their refrigerator because they were sleeping with so many different women. I'm sure it tasted horribly, but it certainly kept him from peeing lava the next morning. In 1982, Lawrence marries his first wife and college sweetheart, Belinda, better known as Linda Cooley. Linda says that LT was completely anti-drug, but when she came to visit him one day at his home with his two teammates, she saw drugs in the house and started to get suspicious. Eventually, things got much worse. She always had to ride around town looking for him, hoping to find him safe and sound while he was doing drugs at different places and crack houses. He even showed up at the hospital drunk while his wife was having their third baby. This would become a common theme and issue throughout the duration of their marriage. In Lawrence's first 6 years in the league, he completely transformed the game. Up until that point, the middle linebacker had always been the focal point of the defense, but Taylor made it to where the outside linebacker was the position that the opposition had to key in on. During the 1985 season, LT was greatly affected by one of the most memorable moments of his career, breaking the right leg of Washington's quarterback, Joe Theismann. That injury actually ended Joe Theismann's career, and until this day, Taylor has a difficult time discussing it. As reckless and careless with his body as he was, he never wanted to do that to another player, especially one that he respected. But hold on, we gotta spice it up some more. In that same season, he used crack and cocaine at least 3 times a week. He said the Giants management and the National Football League knew of his drug problems before he voluntarily entered the rehab facility in Houston Methodist Hospital in February 1986. He also said that he cheated on urinalyses during the 1985 season by submitting the urine of a drug-free teammate rather than his own. LT says that he did crack from the middle of the 85 season to the end, and it was usually when the Giants were playing at home. He'd stay out all night, get blasted on crack, and go out and play like nothing ever happened. He also said that he knew he was no longer going 100%, but his 75% was better than almost everyone's 100%. He was always paranoid about the people that were around him, and drugs were his way of escaping that. Playing in New York and having to please so many people also played a huge part in his drug usage. The cops and the NFL security people knew what he was doing, but he was LT, and he knew that they would do nothing about it. No one ever confronted him about his drug usage either at that time. Now, it's partially true that he checked in rehab at this time in Houston because his life has completely spiraled out of control with all of the drugs and prostitutes. I mean, the man even had dealings with the New York Mafia. His rehabilitation stint was nothing short of a joke, though, as he could come and go as he pleased. Anything he wanted, he got, and he was even able to have a TV and a phone in his room when no one else could. It was simply to keep the heat off of himself and the Giants, if we are being completely honest. Matter of fact, he said that there were rumors going around the league that he was doing crack because the Giants had him followed. Linda, his wife at the time, even said it herself that the rehab was such a joke. Lawrence didn't even have to go to his meetings. The man ended up playing golf to keep his mind off of drugs and alcohol, and even that became an addiction for LT. He just had an addictive nature that he could not get rid of. In the locker room, Lawrence was also a very, very big problem for the coaches, namely Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick, but there was nothing that they could do about it because he was LT. Oh, but hold on, I got some heat. Let's talk about it. One time during a team meeting, he arrived late in handcuffs after a long night with a prostitute. Carl Banks, former Giants great, told the story on ESPN's Get Up, telling how LT had both hands behind his back under his sweater. The lights were off as they were watching film, and the team could hear the metal clanging sound of the handcuffs. They stand up, ask him what's going on, and he tells them that he is handcuffed from dealing with his call girls. The man was incredibly wild, and social media today would have torched him with laughter and jokes had he been around playing today. I could truly go on for days with as many stories that are out there about this man, his bad habits in the locker room and on game days, and how he managed it. Listen to this one. LT was a night owl and a party animal, right? One story from one of his former teammates, Bart Oates, is about him going down to Atlantic City the night before the game and getting dropped off by a limo at the stadium right before the game starts and going out to kill it. The man was completely out of his mind, but he was just that damn good. Another story alleges that before a big game, the coaches sent the trainer to find LT because he was late. The trainer showed up at his hotel room and saw him laid out on the floor, drunk off tequila. They had to bring him into the locker room during warm-ups, put ice towels all over his body, gave him a ton of coffee, and this guy went out and had 4 sacks. The stories are unbelievable. But wait, we got some more. Lawrence used to gain a competitive advantage over his opponents by sending escorts and prostitutes to their hotels the night before a game. He said that he learned that trick because it was played on him one time before a game before Houston, where some Houston players sent 2 escorts to his room to wear him down, and it actually worked. He would tell the girls to make sure that they gave their all in the bedroom with the opponents, and it played out well for him. The man was so gifted at his job, it didn't matter what he was doing. He would be falling asleep during game film and while the coaches were installing new plays, and he could go up to the board and redraw the play as if he was the one who came up with it. I mean, truly, what can you really do about a guy who was always late to practice and always causing disruptions in the locker room, yet was the most dominant force the game had seen? I'll tell you, nothing. You could do nothing about it. In 1988, after the Giants had a disappointing season, LT was in for a rude awakening once the drug policy was changed in the NFL. See, prior to this year, the drug testing was left in the hands of the individual teams, and the Giants always covered up for Lawrence and tried to get him as much help as possible. He also was able to beat the drug testing because he would always use urine from a teammate that was clean, like I said earlier. LT was busted for his drug use after his pee came back dirty. Well, it wasn't actually his, it was a teammate's. The even crazier thing about the situation is that the teammate that he got the urine from passed his drug test. He was suspended for 4 games without pay. It eventually came out that it was his second time failing the drug test, as the first time in 1987 it was covered up. A third time, bans him from the league for life. During this time, LT had a lot of women while being married to Linda. I mean a lot. He opened up a sports bar in 1990, and on the second floor, he had his best friend Dino pick up new and different women left and right. Linda had to deal with women calling her house at all hours of the night, Lawrence staying out all night, every night. Just a crazy time for her. In 93, LT retired from the game officially. Amazingly, what made him ultimately retire was his urge to start doing drugs again, and that is something that I don't think most people know about. He could not get the thought of doing recreational drugs again out of his mind, and that is one of the saddest moments I can think of when it comes to Taylor. And when he retired, that is exactly what happened. But not so fast. I forgot to mention something about his playing career that would have had major implications today had it been done today. LT and the Giants were notorious for placing bounties on players and getting paid for laying them out. Bountygate was a massive deal back in 2009-2011 with the New Orleans Saints and caused them a ton of scrutiny and sanctions. But back during his playing days, Taylor was paid $500 to $1,000 for decapitating his opponents. Following his retirement, LT had more drugs and women than ever before. I mean, the man even fathered 2 illegitimate children while being married to Linda. In fact, he has a total of 7 or 8 children, but only publicly acknowledges 4 of them. The man was even a part of a quote-unquote deadbeat sweep in New York, where they rounded him up and forced him to pay back payments for one of his illegitimate kids. She ended up divorcing him in 1996. He was living his life as a complete lost soul and drug addict, and whenever people would go to visit him at his home, including his own kids, it was nothing but a drug den. The home the kids had grown up in was completely turned upside down, and the man was clearly going through depression throughout this entire process. His kids were of age and they saw all of this going on with their own 2 eyes, and this really affected his relationship with his kids, especially the girls. He also started his own company, All Pro Products Incorporated. The company went public at $5 a share, and financial observers watched in awe as the company tripled in value during the first month of its existence. The stock price went up to $15.50 a share, but it turned out that insane growth of All Pro Products was just an illusion. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, found that 2 traders had manipulated the price of the stock, which skyrocketed despite the fact that the company lost over $900,000. In the end, Taylor lost several $1,000s, and the company's stock, which was once valued at $10.8 million, was worth only pennies. But despite these financial struggles, Taylor stayed in the limelight by appearing in WrestleMania. He had a string of arrests and child support problems and other personal issues that he just couldn't escape. Unfortunately, his kids couldn't escape it either. They were greatly affected by this at school, and he was an embarrassment for them. You know, they really did harbor a lot of resentment for him because he was always in the news for the wrong reasons. His children were even called crack babies by schoolmates. Once his football career was removed from him, he didn't know how to handle life. He had cheated death so many times during the second half of his life and expressed suicidal thoughts on a multitude of occasions. In 1998, his interview with sports reporter Jim Nantz was very eye-opening. He was clearly not sober and completely out of his mind. He was erratic, didn't answer the questions clearly, and made his situation even worse. That interview was conducted to get his reputation back in order, and it did the complete opposite. Days later, he ended up right back in rehab after begging the judge to not send him to jail for being caught buying crack again. This stint at rehab was actually a lot better for him, and it seemed to have worked. He took it seriously, worked to be a better father and make himself a clean and sober human being. Again, yes, Lawrence's issues were mainly his own fault, but showing compassion for a man who was clearly battling demons and depression should be there, in my opinion. When the Any Given Sunday movie released in 1999, people finally got to see Lawrence Taylor as a new man, a changed man. But that didn't stop the NFL from contemplating not putting him in the Hall of Fame. He had so many issues throughout his career, and after that, they were actually pondering not putting one of the greatest to ever touch the field into the Hall of Fame. Truly astounding. They did let him in, and he gave a memorable speech at his induction. In 2001, LT marries his second wife, Maritza Cruz, but they were eventually divorced in 2005. It was rocky from the start. On May 8, 2002, just 6 months after tying a knot, Taylor allegedly blew up at his home when Cruz accused him of cheating after finding glitter in his car. According to Cruz's statements, Taylor yanked her right arm and knocked her to the floor. She said Taylor also kicked her stomach while wearing golf spikes. Taylor was not arrested, but Cruz got a restraining order against him. Fast forward a little bit, LT gets married to his third, now former wife, Lynette Taylor, in 2007. The couple had 3 children together, but things were not so rosy during their relationship either. But more to come on this later. Lawrence had been completely clean from drugs since his last rehab stint in 1999. Then in 2010, the worst moment of his life happened, and all of that goodwill he had built up came crashing right down. Here's how the story goes. He was accused of R-wording a 16-year-old girl named Christina Fieto during a prostitution call, and he was heading for trouble. The story goes, Taylor reached out to a man named Rashid Davis to bring over a girl to his hotel room. Prior to bringing the girl to LT, Rashid told Fieto to tell him that she was 19 years old and made her repeat it over and over again while hitting her. Initially, Lawrence said that he did not have intercourse with the girl, but he did eventually admit to it. The girl told him that she was 19 and he never even carded her to be sure. She also stated that she had asked him to stop because it was hurting and she did not want to be there, but Taylor said that it was not true and that the encounter only lasted about 2 minutes. Fieto claims that LT saw that she had a black eye when she arrived at his hotel, and LT denied this as well, and said that he would have done something had he known that she was forced into the situation. Taylor paid $300 for the encounter and eventually took a plea deal to keep him out of jail. He was sentenced to 6 months probation and he also had to register as a low-risk sex offender. Eventually came the civil suit when Gloria Allred then attached herself to the case. He won that suit and did not have to pay any damages to Christina Fieto. He kicked his alcohol addiction as well. But in 2013, his son, Lawrence Taylor Jr., or TJ for short, was arrested for R-wording 2 girls, including one being 16 years old. In 2015, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison and 20 years of probation after reaching a plea deal. But what would LT's life be like if the party ever stopped for him? In 2016, his wife, Lynette Taylor, was sentenced to 3 days in jail for assaulting LT in a domestic violence dispute where she picked up an unknown object and hit him in his head, cracking it wide open. The woman had 3 prior cases of domestic violence on her record, so this does not come as a surprise. But of course, it gets worse for him. While he and Lynette had been going through their marital problems, he had been staying at a hotel during that time. He was arrested in 2021 for failing to register as a sex offender, but apparently it was all a misunderstanding. According to him, he put the wrong address down that he thought was accurate. In 2002, his charge was reduced to just a misdemeanor and the other charge dropped altogether, and walked out a free man, having to serve no jail time, no probation, nothing. LT has been trying to keep his nose clean, both figuratively and literally, in his older age, and I'm hopeful that he will be able to do so in order for him to enjoy his latter years. And that concludes today's episode of Sports Scandals. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If there's anybody y'all want me to do, please put it in the comments. I'll make sure to get to it. There's a lot more where this came from. Signing off.
I'm off ahead, so I guess I'm labeled a headhunter. Throw me on the verse and I promise you'll probably last longer. Moving through the masses, I'm crashing the main circuit. Too bad cause I had the plans to be modest, remain closer.